Sarah had always loved the quiet town of Eldridge. Nestled between thick forests and craggy hills, it was a place where time seemed to stand still. But there was something about the old house on the hill that made her uneasy. It was the one she'd inherited from her late grandmother, a place Sarah had visited as a child but hadn't returned to in years. When the house was left to her, she thought it might be the perfect place for a fresh start. So with a sense of hopeful nostalgia, she packed her bags and moved into the creaky Victorian-style home. The house was old, far older than any other in Eldridge, but it had character. Its high ceilings, sweeping staircase, and vintage fixtures made it feel like stepping into a different time. But as soon as Sarah entered, a strange heaviness settled over her. The air felt thick, almost oppressive, and the wooden floorboards groaned with every step she took. She brushed it off, thinking it was just the house settling, or maybe her nerves from the move. The first few nights were uneventful. She unpacked, reorganized, and tried to familiarize herself with the house. Yet when the moon hung high, she would hear faint whispers. At first she thought it was the wind. Maybe the house was just drafty. But as the nights passed, the whispers grew clearer, like voices murmuring just beyond the walls. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah sat in the living room, reading a book, when she heard a soft knock on the wall. She froze. It wasn't the typical creak of an old house. It was deliberate. Another knock followed, then another. Her heart thudded in her chest and she stood up, moving cautiously toward the source of the sound. The wall near the staircase. As her hand hovered over the cold surface, she heard something else. A voice, soft but unmistakable, whispered her name from behind the wall. "Sarah, come closer." She stepped back, her blood running cold. This was no wind. This was no house settling. She left the living room and ran to the kitchen, trying to shake off the terror rising in her throat. But as soon as she passed through the hallway, she saw something that made her freeze in place. The door at the end of the hallway, the one that had always been locked, was now ajar. The door had never been opened since her grandmother's passing. Against every instinct telling her to run, Sarah approached the door, her heart hammering in her chest. She pushed it open slowly, the hinges screeching in protest, and stepped inside. The room was empty, save for a small wooden chest sitting in the center of the floor. Dust clung to its edges as if it had been undisturbed for decades. Her curiosity won out, and she approached the chest, her fingers trembling as she touched the lid. It was locked, but the moment her hand brushed the surface, the air seemed to grow even colder. Suddenly, a harsh whisper filled the room. "Don't open it!" Sarah jerked back, but the voice continued, now louder, more frantic. "You don't know what's inside!" Her heart raced and she quickly turned to leave, but the door slammed shut on its own. Panic gripped her chest as she tried to pull the door open, but it wouldn't budge. Then from behind her, she heard something moving in the darkness of the room. A figure. It was a shadow at first, just a flicker. But as it grew clearer, Sarah realized it was the shape of a person. No, a thing. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and its hands stretched out toward her. It whispered her name again, this time with a strange, unnatural echo. "Sarah!" The chest rattled violently. A horrifying sound like nails scraping across glass filled the room. She screamed and lunged for the door, her hands desperately pulling at the handle, until finally, with a violent crash, it gave way. She tumbled out into the hallway, gasping for breath. The house was eerily quiet again, as if nothing had happened, but Sarah knew better. That night she couldn't sleep. The walls around her whispered constantly, growing louder and louder until she couldn't tell where the house ended and the voices began. Each whisper seemed to be calling her, pulling her deeper into its darkness. And then, the knock came again. This time it wasn't from the walls. It was from inside the chest. Sarah didn't sleep that night, nor the next, and soon she began to wonder if she ever would again. Something inside that house had woken up, something that hadn't been disturbed in years. The whispers, they never stopped.